Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Matt's Mindset Monday. And today we have a special topic, something that actually was going back and forth on how I wanted to do this, but it's all about mindset plus actions. And when I was first building out the content on how I wanted this to go, I was really focused on how do you achieve results. But then as I started having some conversations, I got reminded of a keynote speech that I attended with Sean Anchor, and he wrote the book The Happiness Advantage. So I'm actually going to shift this one up a little bit, and instead of focusing on results, I want to focus on happiness with this section. And we're going to talk about the mindset, and then how do you take actions towards just being happier overall, or living a happy lifestyle, if you will. Before we dive into this, there are a couple things that I like to kind of talk through when it comes to happiness. Is there's potential, and then there's actuality. And it's common, if we were to study people as a whole, the things that we hear a lot is that we're a product of our genes and our environment, when the actuality is your potential comes from your genes and your environment. So your genes are something that's completely outside of your control. Obviously, you get the genes that you got when you're born. The environment is something that we typically can't seem to change. So when I say genes plus environment equals potential, I say that because that's not necessarily what determines success or happiness in life. Because while we can't change our genes, we 100% can change our environment. And when we change our environment, and I want to be clear, I'm not just talking physical environment, I mean mental environment as well. When we really focus on changing our mental and even physical environment, if we need to, that's when we unlock what is actually possible from a happiness and from a success standpoint. So I want to talk a little bit about positive habits and different things that we can do to increase our happiness. There was an exercise that we got to do, and I would encourage everybody to do this, is get with somebody that you know. It can be a friend, it can be a relative, it can be a significant other, but get together with somebody. And I want the first person, so just pick the person on the left, for example, I want them to look at the other person for 7 seconds. And all you're going to do is smile. So I'm just going to look at you in your eyes and smile for 7 seconds. The other person is going to do everything in their power to maintain a neutral expression. So you just sit there while they're smiling, just be neutral, try not to smile back, laugh, cry, anything along those lines. Then you're going to switch roles, and the person who was smiling is now going to maintain the neutral expression. The person that had the neutral expression is going to smile. And what you'll quickly realize is that it's really hard when somebody's smiling at you to not smile back. Now, there are some mindset Jedis out there that have the ability to maintain that neutral face. I'm definitely not one of them. But what this exercise and this shows is that really we are a product of our environment, in terms of, if we change our environment and we get around people who are smiling and who are more happy, then that tends to rub off on us. See, smiles, yawns, negativity, positivity, all spread in crowds, because we tend to pick up on our environment. And this is due to something that's called mirror neutrons. And I'm not going to get into all of that right now, but just know it's what's going on in our brains that impacts our, what's going on in other people's brains can impact what happens in our brains as well. Because see, we're, like I said in the beginning, we're more than just our genes, our environment. A great example of this is, a lot of you have heard of Ritz-Carlton, and they're known for their customer service. Well, part of the reason that they're known for that is they have what's called a 10-5 rule. When they're 10 feet away from a customer or somebody that's in their hotel, then they make eye contact and smile. When they're 5 feet away, they say hello. When they first implemented this really led to an increase in thoughts by the clients and staff in terms of how they felt of the overall happiness and customer service inside of Ritz-Carlton. There was also another social experiment that was done in a hospital, where they studied the hospital and they gave customer service surveys to all the people who were getting something done inside the hospital by the doctors. And they took those results. Then they put people inside the hallways, because you couldn't go into the operating rooms, obviously. They put people in the hallways that did nothing more but make eye contact, smile, and say hello. They never changed the doctors. They didn't change procedures. And yet, whenever that happened, the smiles in the hallway led to the customer service surveys going from being a 6 to a 7 on average to being an 8 or a 9. And keep in mind, the service never changed. The people that were actually taking care of, the nurses, the doctors that were taking care of, never changed. The only difference is there were people in the hallways who were smiling and who were saying hello and who were making eye contact. So that just goes to show that the environment and the situations that you find yourself in, that can have an effect on your overall mood. So now let's go jump back to today's topic, and let's talk a little bit about mindset, and then we're going to talk about action items in order to be able to improve happiness. So when it comes to mindset, there's really 2 mindset shifts that you can make that will totally change your life. One is the traditional belief. It's, if I work hard, I'll be successful. And if I'm successful, then I'll be happy. And every time, the problem with this one is every time you accomplish something, the bar of success gets moved up. In other words, that target keeps rising. So in my world with real estate, if I set the target to have 50 sales this year, once I achieve, and if I get 50 sales, I'm going to be as happy. I'm going to be through the moon. That's great. And then the next year, what happens? I say, well, I got 50 last year. Now I want to do 60. And if I get 60, then I'm going to be really, really happy. So you can see that target constantly keeps rising as we go throughout life. And this could apply to more than just, business. This could be even in our personal lives. And see, this mindset says that happiness is on the other side of success. Yet with constantly moving success measures, you're really telling yourself that you'll never be happy. And that is because there's no connection between the happiness and the success. Now, that is in that scenario. In another study that was done by Harvard University, they found that the top 10% of optimistic people outperform the other 90% by an aggregate of 80+%, meaning that the top 10% actually outperform everybody else. And not only do they outperform them, they outperform them on average by 80% more. Because the greatest predictor in terms of sales performance is optimism. And you can see there that there's a difference between being optimistic about a goal being set and that leading to happiness versus I'm going to be happy once something happens. It's either once you learn to become happy overall, then the performance comes after that. And that's why that Harvard study that was done around optimism is so powerful, is because it wasn't the people who said, when I set out to achieve X, I'm going to be happy, that were the top performers. It was people who were naturally happy and had worked on becoming happy that ended up being the top performers. And they were happy regardless of how they performed. And yet their performance led to happiness. So happiness is definitely one of the keys to success. When you say, I feel happy when blank, 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 that doesn't work. Instead, to be more happy, you have to focus on being grateful and then identifying what are stressors in your life. But see, happiness isn't an individual sport. It takes a tribe to become happy. There's a couple of different, in the book, The Big Potential, that he wrote, there's 2 different studies about a hill study and about a firefly study. And this is proof that it takes more than just yourself to be happy. In the hill study, it says that and I'm going to kind of summarize this as quickly as I can, but if you look at a hill by yourself and the hill looks 20% taller and harder than if you look at the hill with another person beside you who is willing to do the hill themselves. So if you look at things by yourself, obstacles, for example, by yourself, then your brain tries to protect you. And it basically kicks in fight or flight type mode. And it tries to tell you, hey, don't do that hill. It's going to be too hard. Versus if you have somebody right alongside you who's also willing to challenge that hill as well, the brain kicks in and says, hey, we have a partner. We can go do this. There's also a Firefly study that I would encourage you all to read about. Again, it's in the book, The Big Potential by Sean Anchor, and it really outlines the impact of operating in a community and what that does when they studied fireflies in Indonesia. But the point of all that is that the world isn't survival of the fittest. It's survival of the best fit and the best cultures. And the more connected people, the people that you work with are, the more successful that the team is going to be. So social connection score is the most important when it comes to happiness, and happiness is the precursor of success, and that we have to go along together. So that's a little bit around the mindset of happiness, is knowing that, that don't pick things that I'll be happy once X happens. Choose to be happy and then do things that make you happier. So let's talk a little bit about action and action items towards happiness. Gratitude exercise is three unique things that have happened in the last 24 hours that you can reflect on. So your brain can't tell a difference of what happened when something happens in person. So I'm experiencing it, I'm living it right now, versus when you reflect back on that thing. It's the same chemical reaction in your brain. So by creating the habit of constantly looking back and looking for 1, 2, or 3 or more different happy things that happened to you the day before, when you wake up in the morning, if you'll relive those things, your brain makes that connection. That's the same thing that happens in your head happens again when you're just reflecting on it, and tends to be happy and tends to lead to more happiness. So what are some other action items you can do? Number 1 is start giving one item of gratitude every single morning. Wake up and say, for 21 days, I'm going to give gratitude first thing in the morning, and I'm going to give gratitude last thing at night. Just that act in itself will start to increase the amount of happiness that you have. Some other things are take a brisk walk 4 to 5 times per week for just 15 minutes with someone. And that's the key. Don't do it by yourself. Find somebody that you can partner with and go on a walk 4 to 5 times a week for 15 minutes. Studies have shown that when you do this consistently and you're having conversations while you're walking, in 6 months, depression reduces to the levels of antidepressant drugs. And there's been actual studies that have done and shown this. So exercise and being social with somebody and communicating with somebody can have the same effect as antidepressant drugs. If that's not powerful enough to give it a shot, then I don't know what else is. You also can take, when you find a stressful moment, take a couple minutes for yourself. So throughout your day, if you find that you're in a high stress situation, take 2 minutes and just focus on your breath. Turn your computer off. Don't read emails. Don't type. Just take 2 minutes and focus on breathing in and breathing out. By doing this, you'll find that not only does your stress decrease, but your happiness increases as well. The next thing you can do over the course of the next 6 months is journal. Journal one positive experience about happiness that happened to you. That whether that's be journaling at night or journal in the morning. I'm a big fan. If you've heard my Miracle Morning conversations, and I'm a big believer in the morning time. However, do what works for you, because again, your brain can't tell the difference in living in experiences versus reflecting about an experience. And then by writing it down, it actually even helps even more. And this, over the course of just 21 days, has been proven to be able to change your energy and your happiness. And then one final thing is spend 2 minutes every day and write a positive email or text to another person. And it has to be somebody different each day. So let me explain. So every day, if you do this every day for the rest of your life, it'll totally change your life. And it is 3 days makes a habit. 8 days is the transition when you start to become happier, because you have to start to scan your brain for other people, meaning that I have to think harder about who am I going to write a positive email to this time, because we've gone through our usual suspects, if you will, during the first 7 days, and we have to think about who's next, because remember, you're doing somebody totally different each day. And then you have to, then after day 8, and you start to scan, you start to look back. and you start to remember happy moments in your life. During part of this exercise, when I was going through this activity, is one of the things I did is I thought back, and I was struggling to find somebody one day, and I remembered my third grade teacher. Her name was Miss Wong. She was at Pinckneyville Middle School in Norcross, Georgia, and she really impacted my life. And I think about her often because she was the first person that I could recall that really encouraged me to be the best version of myself. Outside of maybe some obviously some coaches with sports and things like that. She was the first one that poured into me from a educational standpoint. And so I went through the process of contacting the school and trying to come in contact with her. And over the course, it took me more than a day, it took me a couple of weeks, but I ended up finding an email for her. And I wrote her how impactful she was. And keep in mind, I mean, this was, I'm 42 now. So, I mean, we're talking 35 years ago, 34 years ago, this person had an impact on my life that I still think about it. And I wrote her an email and let her know that how she had changed my life. And Miss Wong's getting up there in age a little bit. And she sent me the sweetest email back. And I wish I still had it. I would show it to everybody if I did. But when I was changing emails, I unfortunately lost it. But this type of activity, when you do these things over consistently, day in, day out, it really does make an impact on you. And it really does help you become a happier person. These things that we just talked about with expressing gratitude daily, taking walks, brisk walks 4 to 5 times a week with somebody and just having conversations, 2 minutes of just breathing in stressful moments, or journaling about previous happiness and reaching out to people and giving them gratitude for ways that they impacted your life. When you do all of these things consistently, you start to see an impact in just 21 days. But if you do it over the course of 6 months, it actually studies have proven that it can take pessimistic people and make them more neutral on a pessimistic, optimistic scale. It can take neutral people and make them actually optimistic. It can take optimistic people and make them highly optimistic. There's been numerous studies about the impact of all of this and gratitude and affirmations and going back to my previous conversations, visualizations. All of these things can be indicators or not indicators, but exercises that can improve your overall happiness. And then when you become ultimately more happy, you'd achieve the results that you want to have as a byproduct. But don't chase the results and think happiness is going to come. Do what you need to do in order to be happy, and then watch how the results come from there. So that's why mindset plus action items, in particular, mindset around what does it take to be happy and can we become happy, and action items towards becoming happier are so important towards not only happiness, but even results. So go out there and focus on your mindset, focus on your action items, and live a happier and more beneficial life. If anybody out there would like to have a conversation around this some point in the future, feel free to reach out to me through my Club Growth Facebook page. Of course, you can always go back and listen to our podcast on Anchor or Spotify or any of the other podcast publications, and then follow us on YouTube for these actual videos. So hope everybody has a very blessed week. Focus on being happy and watch what it does for your life. See you next week.